Hello everyone, thank you for joining us on what is the second of the webinars looking at selective licensing as part of the consultation carried out by Durham County Council. Before I go through the presentation, I'd just like to help and assist in terms of ensuring it's as interactive as possible. So hopefully everyone on Teams will have a toolbar on their screen, and on that toolbar there will be an icon with a question mark. If you click on that icon, you will get down the right hand side the opportunity to type in any question that you want to ask. Again, what I'll do is at the end of the presentation, we should have 30 minutes or so where I'll try and get through as many of those questions as possible. Again, the other thing to say is that we're really looking at consulting on one option tonight. So again, whilst other folk will have lots of other thoughts of how and when we should be doing works in relation to private landlords, that's the sort of information we want through on the consultation is your thoughts on our option, but alternative options. But just so we're clear at the start, this will be on the option that we're consulting on, that we'll be looking at taking forward as a result of the consultation. So on with the presentation. Okay, so again, why selective licensing? Poor housing management can lead to significant housing market failure. And in County Durham, we're seeing this in many of our communities and parts of our communities where what we've had is rogue landlords, poor landlords or tenants come into an area and really start to undermine that area, the confidence in the area, the confidence of residents, the confidence of homeowners, and really start to see it impacted in terms of the housing market going forward, leading to decline and housing market failure in a growing number of communities. So that's our number one. How do we stop that decline? How do we get the confidence back? And that's the primary reason that we're looking at selective licensing going forward. We mentioned this in our housing strategy that was subject to consultation, and that went through the necessary approvals. And so again, we've not hid this as a secret in terms of the need to resolve these issues. We're also doing it to protect tenants as well. Through the pandemic, we've seen some real horror cases in terms of tenants living in unsafe, unhealthy properties, getting no help or support from landlords. Again, I've got to say this, I absolutely appreciate there are some fantastic landlords that we work with, that we come across, and that are probably the ones that are listening today, if I'm honest. So this really is about making sure the whole sector comes up to a standard and a quality. So it is about tackling poor landlords, both in terms of the accommodation they offer, but also the management practices which can impact on the whole neighbourhood going forward. And I make no bones about this. For me, this is largely about tackling those poor landlords, but as well as that, getting a balance with supporting the good landlords and getting confidence back into the sector. So again, in terms of those good landlords, and again, probably the people I'm addressing today, we will be looking at a light touch approach. That's one of the concerns that are being put forward, is this will only ever impact on those who register, etc. Absolutely not the case, and I'll touch on that as we go forward. So it is about those who we know are good, those that we can see are good. Light touch will help, will assist, but it really is about targeting those bad landlords that are within all of our communities going forward. Again, this isn't in isolation either. So there are a number of measures that we've got in County Durham that are already up and running, that have been designed to complement and sit beside landlord licensing. The local lettings agency. This is a scheme the council is starting to implement in terms of getting a stock of houses where we can house the most complex, challenging of our residents, those who need quite a lot of support, and therefore taking the pressure off the landlords in these areas in terms of managing these particular people. As I say, we'll hopefully we'll get up to quite a significant number of these properties right across the county, and that will really complement what we're trying to do here. There's grants, financial support out there. Energy efficiency is just one that we've identified in terms of trying to bring support to landlords and increasing the quality of properties. HMO licensing, again, pretty much focused on Durham area, I accept, but we are looking at licensing and already have mandatory licensing on the HMO side of the sector. We look at area-based interventions in terms of bringing a multi-agency approach forward in terms of environmental health, planning, fly tipping, environmental improvements into areas. And we take that around the county and do these interventions on a fairly frequent basis. Again, it adds confidence for a time, but still doesn't resolve many of the problems that we constantly see. Bringing back empty properties over the last 5 years, year on year, we brought back more and more empty properties. And again, if we can target these alongside selective licensing, then again, this is going to really help us in terms of one of those tools that people refer to. This isn't just the council, this has got the full support of the police and fire. What we have seen in many of these areas that I'm referring to is significant antisocial behaviour increasing, and also we were seeing more and more fires occur and call-outs as a result. So again, this is about not just the council working with landlords, but the police, the fire service, the council and landlords, hopefully working in partnership to see what we can do in relation to this. And again, we've got accreditation. We've seen the impacts of accreditation as we go forward. And again, that's been one of the tools we've used previously in looking to resolve some of these issues. So our proposals, again, as many of you will have reviewed and looked at the website and the consultation information that we put out there, we have looked at the whole county, and our starting point was the whole county. And by looking at government guidance in terms of what is the criteria for selective licensing, we've looked at breaking the county down into what are called middle super output areas, of which there are 66 in total across the county. Now, for the consultation that we put out there, we've identified 43 areas that we want to focus on. 43 areas where we've identified the evidence that sits behind it, and now we're asking you for your comments on. Those 43 area is, as it says there, is around about 65% of the area, but more like 75% of the private rented stock within the county. Again, the evidence that we put forward and the reasons that these 43 areas have been included is around the government guidance that focus on low demand, antisocial behaviour and deprivation. Now, these aren't what we're trying to correct as such. As I've said, that's more about the confidence back into some of these housing market areas that are declining. But these are the symptoms that the government asks us to identify in putting forward areas. However, we won't be applying other conditions that we're open to, as like migration, poor property conditions or crime. So it really is focused on those three key areas. Again, we put forward evidence in terms of each and every one of those four areas. Antisocial behaviour, again, behind this graph, we've also got an understanding of where that's rising. And again, the areas in which the antisocial behaviour relates to private sector rent. We are, however, getting more and more evidence, and this is something that landlords and indeed residents are helping with as it comes forward. So again, one of the challenges we often get is where you've got council housing, private housing, and the private rented sector. How do you know where this is actually coming from? So again, that's something we continue to work on and continue to refine. And again, your thoughts on that are particularly valuable. In terms of house prices, again, this is the house price estimates 2019. The darker the shade, the lower the house price. So again, that shows a real concentration of low house prices, which again obviously relates to demand and issues. Deprivation, and again, this is the deprivation indices pre-COVID, and what we've seen across the COVID pandemic is that where you've got concentrations of high levels of deprivation, that's where we've had high levels of COVID and higher incidence, if you like, of problems. So again, that deprivation indices we think will get actually worse in these particular areas as we move forward. But again, that's something we continue to review and continue to look at. So when you put those three plans together, these are the 43 output areas that are proposed within the designation. So it's really layering up the low housing demand, the antisocial behaviour, and indeed the deprivation indices. But again, this is what we're consulting on. Those are our thoughts. That's our evidence. We're out asking you what you think about not just the proposal, but also the areas that are included. Again, you will, as landlords, probably know better than I this next slide, so I don't want to spend too much time on it. There are mandatory parts that go alongside the license in terms of safety and regulations, but there are also the opportunity to look at other conditions. So conditions that will help and assist in solving local issues. Again, around tenancy management, around referencing, around the expectations of landlords, but also that multi-service, multi-agency approach to solving problems as we go forward. I said right at the start, I think a significant element of this is about targeting bad landlords and bad tenants as we go forward. Again, often I get the challenge that as this is requires landlords to apply, it's only the good landlords that will be in the registration that will be looked at, where we'll be knocking on doors. That's absolutely not the case. We've been to a number of areas and we've listened to a lot of landlords and their challenges on this. And for me, the key here is to find those landlords who aren't registered, that are hiding, that aren't taking care of their areas. And there's a number of ways in which we can do that. We're already looking at information that the council holds, things like council tax. But what we tend to find is that these poor landlords, they're barely visible within the communities. And by working with the communities, by working within that multi-service approach, and having feet on the ground, as it were, we will be absolutely targeting the first of all finding the poor landlords, and then second making sure that they're brought to account. So other things we can do around rent repayment orders, banning orders, and again, I know there's a national database which isn't well used, but nevertheless we do reference it here. Again, we need to get these people out of the industry in order that we can have confidence going forward. In terms of license fee, again, I think the slide is very clear that it's approximately £500. Why approximately? Well, again, until we know exactly the extent of the area and the issues that we're looking at following the consultation, we will not be able to put a definitive figure on that at present. What I can say is it will be no more than £500. And what I also would say is we're absolutely looking at the discounts. Within the consultation, we already identified discounts for accreditation and early bird, and there have been a number of other suggestions put forward as well in terms of how we can help landlords take account of the fee as it comes in. Again, as all of you will know, the income raised can only be used to administer the scheme. So again, this isn't about raising finance for the council. Every penny raised will be put into the scheme and making sure it's a success. We do talk about fees payable in two parts, one on application and second on grant. Again, that's something that you may well have thoughts on or opinions on as we go forward. Again, in terms of the fee, I want this to be as transparent as possible going forward. A number of landlords have said that they may not have the confidence in the council that actually it won't be spent on the right things, etc. So I have made the statement a number of times where I will be looking at setting up a board of such with landlords and making sure that the scheme has that overview of landlords going forward. So looking at where do we focus our priorities, how is the money spent, and looking at the relative success as we move forward and how flexible can we be in respect of that. I'm absolutely of the opinion that for this to be the success I want it to be, we can only do it with the landlords helping and being beside us on this one. So what's included in the fee? Again, administration. Some people think that's just processing, etc. And a big part of that, or no, sorry, a part of that will be. We've looked at other authorities. We've looked at the success and failures of those authorities. And one thing that we absolutely clear on is that the processing of applications has to be simple. It has to be non-bureaucratic, and we've got to get an IT system in place that absolutely does it all for us as much as it can. Again, that doesn't say that we preclude written applications. It doesn't preclude other opportunities for submitting application forms. But again, it's about keeping it as simple as possible as we go forward. Monitoring license, and by what I mean by that is fine processing those who do apply, monitoring licenses, making sure that those don't are actually brought to account and found. So again, we want to make sure we've got a good resource that can actually find those poor landlords that we keep talking and referring to. And again, it's about enforcement as well, and the penalties that the council raise as part of this will also be used in the administration of the fee as well as we go forward. I mentioned other local authorities. Many people mention Nottingham and what they perceive as a failure there. Absolutely, it's true that they had a slow start, a lack of numbers processed, and they actually started to increase their fees from well, 670 up to nearly £900 by the end. Again, largely because we've been down and we've talked to Nottingham, and they absolutely hold their hands up in terms of how they got it wrong, and it was all in that front facing. They didn't have a good IT system, they didn't have good processes, and they didn't have the right staff to be able to start positively. Therefore, a lot of catching up, and therefore, again, we've listened to that, we've learned the lessons, and absolutely, we think we're clear about the priorities and the resources required, obviously depending on the scale going forward. Liverpool, they were refused last year, but this is because they were requesting 100% on low demand. They've had a scheme for 5 years, and therefore, not only did we ask them about their why it was refused, but we found out a lot about the successes in Liverpool and why they were quite keen to continue it forward, and indeed talk to some of the landlords there who first were against the scheme, but actually saw the benefits thereafter. So again, within Liverpool, fairly similar to Durham in terms of numbers, 51,000 across 10,000 landlords. They were able to do 34,000 compliance checks. Interestingly, 64% weren't compliant on the first visit. Now, a lot of those were with landlords who were absolutely wanting to make sure their property was in the finest nick, etc. So again, that was seen as quite a positive in terms of ensuring that everyone was compliant going forward. The figures are there in terms of the incidents, the hazards, the inspections, etc., and also the prosecutions. I think Liverpool wish they'd done more earlier in terms of the prosecutions, and again, that's something we certainly picked up on. Newham is another good example where in the first 4 years, incidents of antisocial behaviour dropped by 61%. Now that only tells you part story. The other part of the story is where confidence came back into those streets, those areas where vacancies also dropped in terms of numbers, and rent levels were stabilised and started to increase. So again, lots of benefits seen there, not just from the wider community, but also landlords in that particular area. Again, it shows there the number of prosecutions, cautions, etc. And again, mainly targeting those poorer landlords in that particular area. One of the challenges I've got, and no doubt we'll get again tonight, will be, but you've got 150 pieces of legislation and voluntary schemes. Put the two together, surely that is the way forward. Again, I'm happy to listen to and always happy to talk through the benefits of voluntary schemes. Again, as I've said, I want to work with landlords going forward, not be against them. So again, we absolutely want to be talking to landlords and landlord associations, making sure that if the scheme does go forward, it is a success. But again, I think the numbers that are demonstrated on this particular slide just shows the low take-up. And again, this is what many of you landlords have said in previous conversations. It's only ever the good landlords that sign up for these things. Well, I think this shows that that's absolutely the right answer in terms of voluntary schemes equals good landlords. What we need to target is those poor landlords, and therefore voluntary schemes, in my mind, and what we're suggesting through this option, is not the way forward. So moving on to the consultation, again, many of you will know we obviously started back in February. And then the pandemic meant that actually we couldn't follow through on a lot of the events that we had in the pipeline. We've talked to government and in respect of getting the consultation back up and running. We've talked through what we're doing and how we're doing it. And again, they've given us a green light in terms of it being in line with the guidance and in the spirit of the ministerial messages that have been put out over the past 3 or 4 months. So what are we doing? Again, we did one landlord event previously, and that was up at Shotton Hall. This is the second webinar and the final webinar in terms of getting the information out to landlords, and that's what tonight's about, giving you the information so that you can go to the websites, etc., and provide us with your comments, your thoughts in respect of the option that we've identified. Again, we did have drop-in sessions for residents. We don't think that's possible. Libraries are just starting to open up, but again, what we don't want to do is ask lots of people to come back to one building, etc., for obvious reasons. So what we have done is we've tried to raise the profile of this by, within the council tax inserts that went out in March, there was some information in terms of selective licensing and the consultation. And again, recently we've done a leaflet drop of around about 200,000 properties with, again, a little bit of information and where to go to leave your comments. So hopefully that will get the message to many of the people that we need to, and that have an interest in this going forward. Could we have done more? I think I'm not sure we could. We put out press releases. We've spoken to associations. We've talked to towns and parish councils. We've got it on the Facebook of Durham County Council and the police. Of course, people will say we could always do more, but it's about being appropriate as well. And I think what we've got there is quite a robust consultation strategy. But again, you may well have thoughts on that as well. So what's the next steps? So following consultation, we're going to take some time to look at the results of that, to look at what you've said, what you've told us, alongside of the evidence as well. Because again, some of the results of the consultation will challenge or add to the evidence we've got. So again, we need to look at that. We will publish feedback on our website of that consultation. And again, we will also look at making sure that both webinars are available to view either on the website or on the Durham County Council YouTube channel. Something that I've only been told exists, but again, we'll let everyone know which one of those forum it'll be available on. And again, we'll get that up in the next few days as well. Once we've looked at the consultation, again, once we've reviewed that against the guidance, we will need to take a report to Cabinet, and that will report whether the recommendation is to submit a business case to the Secretary of State or not. Again, as you will note, the tone of this is that we feel that at this particular time there is a good rationale for doing so, but again, this will be subject to the consultation and the consultation results. We will then submit to government. The guidance from government suggests it's around about an 8-week turnaround. Actually, talking to government, it's a lot longer than that as of today. So again, COVID, Brexit, and all those other things that are a priority to government are taking a lot more of their time than when they put the guidance out that identified 8 weeks. So again, we're in the dark, I suppose, as much as anyone else in terms of if there is a submission, how long would that take? Now, hopefully you've all been putting forward some questions. Again, just to give you a bit more time, because I'm just going to do 2 more slides and move on to that. These are some of the questions that have been asked previously, and again, probably the most pertinent to the challenges we get from landlords. So again, fee, why so high? What I would say to that is we've absolutely tried to keep it down as low as possible. Looking at the costs, looking at the resources required, it is certainly the lowest in the region and one of the lowest in the country. When challenged with, will it go up though after year 1 because you are so cheap? Absolutely not. Again, I think we will cut our cloth accordingly to the monies that we've got to invest at that particular time. So what are the benefits there for us? Why don't you use your existing powers? Again, I absolutely get that. I get that we're asking for a fee for this, and therefore as landlords, there is some reticent or lack of support to do that. Absolutely get that. But again, if we are to improve our neighbourhoods, if we are to stop the decline that we've seen in many of our communities, and that decline isn't just, it starts in a street, in a house, it then goes to a street, it then goes to a group of streets. And again, I could take you to a large number of our communities where we've got the scale of the problem is increasing year on year on year. We need the resource to be able to do this. And yes, we've got the powers, but we just don't have that resource to tackle it. The numbers of private rented sector, the number of landlords coming into the market is just going up year on year on year. 150 up in the last decade, 300%, sorry, 150% in the last decade, 300% in the last 2 years, and it's going up all of the time. It's now our second biggest tenure in County Durham, overtaken social housing. So we need regulation, we need resource as well as the powers, is what I would say. What this does is benefits to yourselves, in my opinion, is it brings some stability to these areas. It reduces vacancy, it stabilises rents, and hopefully start to see increase in rents. It gives you help and support to help with some of those challenging areas that I'm sure you'll mention in the questions when I get to those. Will you be adding additional areas to the proposals? Again, this is one of the fears that we're consulting on one thing and then we'll come up with another. My answer to that is I'm expecting that the area probably will be smaller, if I'm honest. But if we will continue to monitor all of the county, and if areas do start to decline outside of this, then we will look at that. But again, we'll consult on those proposals as and excuse me, as and when necessary. So again, will the scheme go forward on this large scale? Sorry, I think I've just answered that. In terms of, we've looked at the evidence, we've put forward a thought in terms of how the evidence refers to the areas and the improvements we'd like to see there. I think the consultation is adding quality, more quality to that evidence and more local understanding and nuance all of the time. We're using that, and therefore let's see where we get to. But again, will it be this large scale? It may be, but the likelihood is it might be smaller. Why do we need such a resource capacity to act? Again, with the resource, if we resource it quickly, correctly, and target the right areas, then I think the significant improvements we'll see within our communities will absolutely justify that. Just before I go on to the questions, again, obviously, government have said that the ban on serving notice is stops on August the 23rd. I'm absolutely sure that some of you will have experience with tenants at the moment where that may well be something that's in your thought process. What I would ask is, before you move forward with that you do contact us. Stop before you serve. Contact us. We've got advice, we've got services, we've got support, we've got capacity to look at things like rent arrears, to look at financial assistance, to look at mediation, to look at help and advice, as well as all those other support mechanisms we've got in terms of health and well-being, etc., that can help tenants, getting them back into work, etc. So again, let's see how we can work together to perhaps reduce the number of evictions that we may see going forward. So again, just a quick reminder, deadlines on Sunday, the website, the email and the telephone are there. They're also, I think, being well publicised, and therefore thank you for listening. I will now move on to the questions. So therefore, let us go down the questions. Now, what I'll do is I'll scroll down. I'll try and answer as many questions from as many people as possible. Okay, let us start. So I've got one from Peter. Being new to the area in 2015, I was shocked by Durham Council's lack of support when ASB was reported. Police were hamstrung because council laws protecting bad tenants against landlords. Again, Peter, that's something absolutely we've been working with in this multi-agency capacity with the police, with landlords, with the council, is absolutely how can we target those particular issues and support. What we tended to find is that because we haven't had the coordination previously, that police weren't seeing the community or the area improving. It was chucking resource, but with no improvement. With this coordination, with this everyone working together, hopefully we'll see a reduction in antisocial behaviour, police being more proactive, council being more proactive, and tenants having more support to be proactive. So that's how we see this working, and that's very much the conversations we've had with the police going forward. Laura, according to the council figures, around 50% of antisocial behaviour complaints are about barking dogs. How can selective licensing possibly be expected to make any difference to this? Again, this is something we've worked with the police, we've worked with the evidence base to understand and hopefully separate those neighbour issues away from what I would refer to as more challenging antisocial behaviour. So again, dogs can be an issue, absolutely, but usually what we find in the areas we're looking at, it's not just barking dogs, it's criminal activity, it's fly tipping, it's that general disrespect for their community, for their neighbours, etc. And that's what we've got to tackle. Frank, are DCC suggesting that reputable agents such as J. Woods are not competent to ensure properties comply with required standards? That's absolutely not what we're saying, Frank. We've got, again, a good working relationship with the agents. And again, many of the agents are supporting what we're doing because what they're seeing is Many of the areas where they're trying to rent out properties are being impacted by bad tenants, bad landlords, etc. What I would say is there's probably a whole range in terms of agents and landlords. Again, their knowledge, their capacity, etc. What we want to do is help those who possibly need a little bit of support, who possibly are only dabbling, sorry, and this is probably more the landlords, where they think their properties are absolutely compliant. Well, we can help, we can support, we can do those checks alongside of them. But absolutely, we've got some great landlords, great agents. We're not saying anything other than that. Anonymous, what happens if licensed landlords has a problem with a property that is impacted on his tenant? This is a social landlord or a charity. Again, this is this multi-agency approach which I keep talking about. We are absolutely understand that selective licensing can only be used for private sector rent and landlords. But some of these areas are mixed communities. We've got social housing alongside private sector, private rented sector, and it's about working with the Believes, the Carbons, the Live-ins, etc., to make sure that we get consistency in our approach. So absolutely, they'll be part of the multi-agency support, and where they've got bad tenants, etc., we as a council, through our relationship on that side, will be starting to resolve those issues. States another ridiculous council idea to discourage private landlords, disgraceful. Well, thank you for that comment. I'd like to take you and love to walk around some of the streets where actually we've got people who've lived in these streets, in these communities for all of their life. They've invested all of their income into they've retired into these communities. And what we've got is landlords and tenants making their life an absolute misery. So if you think that's disgraceful, well, that's your opinion. If you think it's about discouraging private landlords, it's absolutely the opposite. What we want is to encourage the sector to grow. We want to encourage the sector in terms of the quality, and we want consistency, because what we don't have at this particular time is any consistency within this sector at all. We have the excellent ones over one side, and we've got the absolutely horrendous ones on the other side. And unfortunately, that horrendous side is growing year on year. We need to sort it. And if you've got thoughts here as how we resolve that, well, please, that's what I'd rather hear, rather than how disgraceful this is. Sean, good landlords are fed up with being persecuted. We're already highly regulated industry. No matter how you try and sell this, landlords are angry. Tipping point is on the horizon. Durham Plus has a cheaper alternative solution, which many landlords support. So if you really want to work with landlords, this could be the way forward. Thank you, Sean. That gives me the opportunity to say that I've had a meeting with Durham Plus. My question to them was, how do we tackle the housing market decline, the failing communities that are growing year on year? And I'm still waiting for that answer, Sean. So if Durham Plus can help me with that, then again, I've said at that meeting, I'll happily meet them again and again and again, because absolutely I want to work with landlords, but we need to be honest about what the issues are, and we need to find the solutions that solve the issues. So again, I think Durham Plus bring heaps of positivity and great opportunities in the area, and that's not me endorsing them or plugging them, but again, they are people who know the industry and know Durham. I want to work with them going forward alongside all of the other voluntary areas. Eric, doubtless the Nottingham consultation sounded exactly like this before the scheme started. Why would we believe you now? You were taking a very high level of council tax for a long while now. The current situation is what has resulted. This happened on your watch. Again, I think in terms of the Nottingham consultation, I don't think they necessarily had the benefit of seeing many other schemes in place. We've looked at where they went wrong, and again, they were well-meaning in what they were doing, and we think we've looked at the best and the worst, and we're adopting the best practices. So again, I don't think Nottingham had that privilege or opportunity. Therefore, that's why I think this is the expectation is that that will not happen in Durham. In terms of happening on your watch, we've tried voluntary accreditation. We've tried working with landlords. We've tried using our powers and our capacity. It doesn't work, Eric. We've tried that. The numbers of landlords coming into the area are just so big now. We've got to try something different. And again, that's the option that we put forward. John, when the scheme comes into action, landlords will serve notices on tenants who do not deserve rent increases, particularly following COVID. Landlords do not need the council's help in running their business, nor do they wish to work with DCC. Why are they now being forced to? John, absolutely your prerogative to do what you think is right for your business. What I would say to landlords is to look at the benefits. I do believe that this is about a longer term view of the business. In terms of running your business, I'm sure that, John, you run a very credible and excellent scheme in your portfolio, however big that is. Unfortunately, too many don't. And this is about, as I keep saying, this is about getting some consistency in there. If you had a bad tenant landlord move next to you and you didn't have selective licensing, you've just got no protection at all. And this gives you confidence, I would suggest, in not just staying in Durham, but investing further in Durham. And again, we haven't suggested that landlords pass on the rent increases. We want to look at ways in which we can help and assist with the payment of the license should it be successful. Again, let's keep talking in those issues. So anonymous, why can't you find the rogue landlords only? That's exactly what the selective licensing will allow us to do. It will allow us to find, to prosecute, and to find these landlords, and hopefully, if I'm honest, put them out of business. So again, that's exactly what this is about. Janet, I object to my fees being used to enforce unlicensed landlords. This is an interesting one, Janet, because what I get is a real conundrum, if you like, from the sector. One is that this will only be used to target or to license those who voluntarily come forward, when actually we should be tackling those unlicensed landlords. And again, we need to get that balance right. So that's why I want to work with landlords. That's why I talk about setting up a board. We've got to look at the priorities. We've got to look at the different aspects of this scheme going forward and get the right priorities in the right place that has been designed or co-designed with the help of landlords. So in my mind, at this present moment, I think we can help landlords more by getting rid of and challenging and tackling rogue landlords. I think that, but again, let's work with the industry, let's work with landlords, and let's make sure that the license fee is used to the best it can and is targeted on those things that not just we as a council think, but you as a sector think. And again, happy to work with landlords and voluntary organisations going forward as well. I've asked those questions, just scrolling down. A one from Kevin. What time frame will you want the fee over? As you said on the radio, it is as much as a cup of coffee a week. £500 is not a cup of coffee to a landlord. It is a month's rent, which will be spread over the 5 years. Again, Kevin, I'm pleased you brought this up because I've been challenged on this. And the context of this was that the previous interview on that radio show seemed to suggest it was a lot more than £500, and that there was no context that it was over a 5-year period either. So all I was using there was a cup of coffee a week as a demonstration of the fact it was over a 5-year period that this licensing is in place. Again, landlords are aware of that, but for a lot of residents, community and politicians, that wasn't clear. And therefore, I did want to put it into some sort of context. In terms of absolutely understanding, it's a big amount of money. The bigger the portfolio, the bigger the amount, and that's why again we want to talk to you about how do we look at collecting that fee, what opportunities have we in terms of discounts, and looking at payments across a time scale. So again, absolutely appreciate that, Kevin, and apologies if it came across as flippant. It certainly wasn't meant to be. Fiona, if a previous voluntary scheme has been ineffective, you do not simply introduce a blanket charge on all landlords increasing rents. Please properly review the previous licensing and voluntary scheme and present some alternatives. I haven't seen any alternatives presented by yourself. Thank you, Fiona. And again, I think the problem there is voluntary absolutely means voluntary. There's no tools, there's no mechanism to get those landlords. Actually, we want to target those landlords that are creating the problems in our communities. Those are the ones that, if it were purely a voluntary scheme, would just shut the doors on us, would close their ears to any publicity we put out there. There is nothing in it for those people. In fact, the opposite. There is only torment and challenge if they joined a voluntary scheme, because as you know, as part of a voluntary scheme, we do accredit landlords. They just wouldn't get their accreditation. So again, we need something that's mandatory. And rather than looking at it as a blanket, it's more about that mandatory versus voluntary, targeting those areas that are in decline. That's what we're doing here. And again, that's the option that we put forward, is the best option that we think that will resolve those particular problems. C has come back. Why can't you use local intelligence to target poor landlords more effectively rather than blanket tax? Not all landlords have the money to pay for the license. Again, C, absolutely, this is something that we're looking at, is how can we improve the local intelligence. Even through looking at selective licensing, that has improved significantly. However, there is still more to do on that, and it's only by mandating the licensing will we absolutely be able to not just find them, but penalise them and hopefully put them out of business if that's required going forward. Again, I do understand that not all landlords have the money to pay for the license, and again, I go back to come and talk to us if you've got financial difficulties, etc. We are looking at discounts, we are looking at early birds, we are looking at the ways in which this can be paid as well. But I do go back to a lot of reasons why landlords are in these areas that are failing is they bought a number of years ago, and what they've seen is the whole area deteriorate around. They're getting higher vacancy, they're getting more challenge in terms of rents, etc. And again, we've got the evidence, we know where these areas are, and we're happy to have those conversations. Eric, so because of COVID, Durham County Council get to do what they want without proper scrutiny? Absolutely not, Eric. The only difference between this consultation and the previous one is I'm not standing in front of 50 people in a venue where, if I'm honest, probably only a third of the people or less actually asked a question. What this provides is a format where actually everyone can ask a question, and we will answer all of the questions. We'll probably group them together and give an answer to them, but absolutely every question should be answered. So Eric, I don't know what you mean by proper scrutiny, but all a consultation is to provide information, to get your information so that we can submit that to government. That's where there is no change to this process. In fact, as I say, I think more people have access to this than they would have previously. James, If you agree that voluntary schemes equals good landlords and say that you want to work constructively with good landlords, why not offer a discount on the licensing fee for landlords who are already members of the voluntary schemes as a show of your good faith? Well, again, we've already come out in the consultation and said, absolutely, if you're an accredited landlord, voluntary scheme, you will get a discount. Happy that if people have got other thoughts on other discounts, please put them forward, and we'll happily have a look at that, James. In terms of anonymous, concert never had single issue with antisocial behaviour or demand. In fact, they rent prior to even being purchased. I think I got that same question from an anonymous at the last webinar, and again, I think my answer to that was I'm really pleased that that's the case. However, there are too many areas, too many landlords, and are just not just affected by tenants, but affected by bad landlords in their street, in their location, in their vicinity. There are places now where people are starting to identify as places that they don't want to live because they can't guarantee who's living in the street at any particular time. We really need to get more regulation and more consistency into this as we go forward. Michaela, you didn't contact the landlords directly. Michaela, I think if this is in reference to tonight and the consultation, I think we've done as much as we can in respect of that. But I do go back to the fact that if we know of you, we've contacted you directly. But equally, we've got press releases, we've got social media. We've done lots to try and get the information out there. So again, hopefully, I think that might answer your question. If it doesn't, please come back. That would be good. Susie, one avenue for consultation that has not been taken is notifying landlords via the HB payment letters. Again, having said, I've spelled out that council tax, every council tax person who's liable for council tax had a letter through the door. Every 200,000 households have had leaflets through the door. Again, I'm sure I could think of 2 or 3 things that I've not done, or it's about being appropriate, being focused, etc. So I take your point. We probably haven't done that. But having said that, I think we have got quite rigorous processes that we've implemented here. Anonymous, Tanya Carter. Oh, sorry, it's not anonymous, it's Tanya Carter. I'm a member of a landlord association. I was told a reduced fee would be looked at. Is this still a case? Again, we've looked at the accredited landlords run by the council. Again, we're happy to look at that, Tanya. And again, any thoughts on how that would work? Let's get them in and let's have a look at that. More than happy to look at. Anonymous, can you tell us the results of the consultation? I suspect they are pretty poor, just reading these comments. Anonymous, I think you're probably right, although obviously the consultation doesn't end until the 2nd of August. I mean, what we're, it's a bit like turkeys for Christmas, this, isn't it? I'm talking to a sector, telling them that I want to charge you £500 for a process when actually everyone in this live event is probably someone who feels that this shouldn't be done to them. Absolutely understand that, absolutely expect that the consultation from landlords will not be positive. Having said that though, Anonymous, what I would also say is that I've spoken to a lot of landlords at events, etc., etc., and there are a number out there that do feel that this is required and long overdue, and those are probably the ones who are more affected or impacted by the housing market decline in their particular areas. Again, a few more anonymous, but what I'll try and do is just move through those. One anonymous, sorry, I'm running out of named ones, but we now only have 4 days to respond following the presentation today. That doesn't give us a lot of time, so why is it so urgent to complete on 2nd of August? Again, the There's been other events, there's been leaflets out there, there's been information out there since February. We need to conclude this at some point. 2nd of August is a time just before or at a time when schools are going on holiday, people are going on holiday, etc., etc. We could have extended it until September, but again, we didn't feel that it would get the focus or the response that we need. Again, it's certainly meets all the criteria in terms of guidance. 4 days, you're right, it's a quick turnover, but the information has been out there for quite some time. Stuart, in the midst of a pandemic and with government's furlough scheme starting to taper off, good tenants are going to be faced with increases in rents. Should these proposals get approval, do you seriously think that's fair? Well, Stuart, what I'd ask you is, do you think that's fair? We're not saying that this is a tax on tenants. In fact, we're not. We think that there is a good logical thought process that would say that if this is implemented, and if this is a success, that you as landlords will see opportunity through this. Again, you will see lower vacancies, you will see stabilized house prices, you will have comfort and confidence that your street won't be impacted by a bad landlord or a bad tenant going forward. So again, my thought is not to pass it on to tenants, but that is your choice, not what the council is proposing. Gordon, DPLA chairman, I hope you don't mind me identifying you as that one. Who has paid for the council tax inserts, please? Which budget? And the 200,000 leaflets drop. Which housing associations did you drop? Well, two things there, Gordon. One is I've just been criticised for not consulting wide enough or getting message out there. And yes, there is a cost of that, and that has come from the Durham County Council budgets that I'm responsible for. So again, that has definitely come from the council. And again, I'll happily tell you what that was. I'll contact you. I'll even put the information up on the website. Again, I want to be transparent about this, but you can't on one side say that we're not getting the information out there and then criticize us for actually getting the information out there. So I take your challenge. It was paid for by the council. Council tax inserts are negligible. The letters are going out anywhere. Yes, the leaflet drops. We wanted to give people as much time and opportunity to consider the issues, and therefore we felt that was appropriate. In terms of which housing associations did you approach? Again, I'm not understanding the context of that particular question. We continue to talk to and have good relationships with every single housing association in the county, and as a multi-agency support going forward, we will continue to work with every single one of those housing associations. Each one know what we're doing and are supportive of what we're doing. Michaela has come back. I manage properties from London. I had someone do my inspections for me. I visit once a year. My properties are in good condition, meeting all lawful requirements. I'm an ALA agent. I've never had a bad tenant. I think Durham should concentrate on bad landlords, not landlords with professional managed properties. Again, Michaela, I think I absolutely understand where you're coming from there. And again, whilst we'll be putting help and support in for the good landlords, you've obviously got a big portfolio and therefore of confidence in that going forward. Many landlords welcome some support, some help, etc. Again, this isn't just about lawfulness, this is about support in terms of how to deal with bad tenants. We often, no matter how good a landlord you are, it sometimes can happen. But again, I said right at the very start, my first bullet on the presentation, I think, was dealing with and focusing on bad landlords as we go forward, because they do impact on good landlords. Sandra, Why do you need to do this? You should inspect properties prior to agreeing, paying housing benefits, etc. Only then will those landlords improve their standards. I pride myself on high maintained standards. Again, Sandra, you're one of many really good landlords. I'm absolutely convinced of that. Proud of what you do and how you do it. And again, I wish every landlord were like you. Again, we will always look at opportunities for getting in, finding and resolving the problems. And again, we'll look at all of the information that's available to us. And if that means that we can use housing benefits, then we will absolutely use housing benefits as we go forward. Denise Tanfield Lee labelled as low demand. This is not the case. Don't lump us all together. Again, it's a great question, Denise, because I've got this on a number of areas where there will be a small area or a part of one of the areas we're looking at. We've gone for middle super output areas in terms of how we're looking at. That's 66 areas across the county we had to analyse in great detail. If you go to the next level down, well, it just becomes overbearing. The statistics don't work, etc. So again, government have told us that it's more appropriate and it's more appropriate for them to analyse the information when it comes in if we use the areas that we have used. So we are following guidance on this one. And again, I do understand that some people interpret this as lumping big chunks together in terms of low demand or antisocial behaviour, etc. That's not what we're trying to do here. And again, apologies if that comes across. What we're trying to do here is focus on those areas who need help and support to get back to where we all want to be in terms of confidence, stability, and somewhere where we'd all be proud to look at owning a house, where unfortunately not the case in parts of these areas that we're looking at. Anonymous, can the council provide a form of words or letter to provide to tenants when the rent increases such that they can approach you with concerns? Yes, that letter would say, Anonymous, that this decision was made by the landlord, and that as a council we're working with landlords to help hopefully improve the area, improve the condition, the confidence of that area as well. Again, it's not the council's approach that you pass this on to the tenants. What about another Anonymous? What about rogue tenants? Why is it just targeted at landlords? Again, that's absolutely not the case. We want to make sure that by looking at referencing, by looking at the help and support that we put in place, that we can help those landlords remove those rogue tenants. Again, we all know that's a hard, challenging and sometimes long drawn out problem for landlords. But again, using multi-agency support, getting the police involved, using the powers of the council, using the extra capacity of the council. Let's see if we can improve that, and let's see by working together, can we actually get sorted those rogue tenants as we move forward. Gordon, DPLA chairman, have you got a fallback procedure if a lot of good private landlords sell their properties? Well, again, Gordon, I think this is something that's been mentioned a number of times. We were in Scarborough before the lockdown and talking to the council there. And again, this is something that was a fear at that particular time. And there were two fears. One was that the bad landlords would just move to non-licensed areas, and that good landlords would just sell up and move anywhere. How it's turned out is neither of those scenarios have moved forward. The good tenants, private landlords, have actually seen the benefits of the council there tackling some of the problems that they were faced there. But again, absolutely, we don't want that to happen. We want to help work with and continue a relationship with good landlords like yourself. And again, through the organisations that you reflect. What we're seeing is there's too many landlords in County Durham at the moment who can't sell their properties because of the issues that we're trying to tackle here, that they're in negative equity, there is no market, they can't even And again, happy to walk around these areas, Gordon, with you and some of your folk once lockdown's finished, and just let's appreciate and share the scale of what we're trying to do here. But there are some landlords who are accepting 50 quid just to get some money through the door. I mean, those are in the extreme cases, absolutely understand that, but nevertheless, they do exist. Janet, have you considered the financial impact of COVID-19 in terms of rent arrears and landlords? The costs just keep coming. This is something passed on to the tenants. Janet, absolutely we have. And again, I've got to say that this is probably something why we haven't started the consultation sooner than we did, because we did want to understand the COVID issues, etc. Again, the conclusion we've come to is we've got to start to look at tackling this at some point. Again, we want to work with you. My last slide was all about the help, the support that is available in terms of financial help, employment help, health help for tenants that the council can provide. So again, Janet, if you've got tenants who are struggling, who you think we can help, that's all part of this joined up approach. Is we do want to help the tenants as much as we want to help the landlords in respect of this. Steve, a very quick question: why are housing associations not subject to license fee? Government didn't allow us to do that, Steve. It's purely a government scheme and guidance that we're looking at here, and housing associations are just not included in that. Having said that, we are working closely with the housing associations, making sure that contracts, make sure that references, many of the things that we talk about in the private sector are applicable in the social sector as well. Just moving on. Have we run out of time? I think that's it, guys. There are lots of questions that I could go on probably for another hour or two. Again, I don't want to take up more time than you've been provided. So again, I'd just like to thank you all for tuning in, for asking the questions. Again, I sort of apologise and don't apologise for the candour in terms of my answers, but I think what we've got to do is we've got to be clear on why we're doing this, and clear on why the council is putting this forward to an option, so that you can absolutely understand and challenge us in that. So again, if you think we're ridiculous, if you think it'll cause a public outcry, well, please tell us why. We're more than happy to take into account any thoughts, any new evidence, any discussions that you want to take forward. We're happy to do that. And as I said, as we move this forward, it is the intention that we do get landlords part of the scheme to co-design it as we go forward, and hopefully we'll all see the success as we move forward. So at that point, again, just like to thank you all, wish you a great evening, and please look at the websites as we go forward. There'll be more information in there in terms of the consultation and next steps. So thank you.